Hello everyone, my name is Naguura and today I have a quick simming guide for you on how to use raid bots properly. Once you have that add-on installed, you can just log on your character. It's not that important, but make sure if you don't want to change your talents or you don't want to sim your talents, then just select the correct talent build that you want to sim your character for, and then type /simc into your chat and press Ctrl+C to copy whatever just came up. Then we're gonna go into raid bots, and here at the top, you're gonna make sure you're Ctrl+V-ing, so pasting the information that you just got from your character in-game. Now, it will load your character here, it will load your gear that you have equipped, it will load your talent tree. Now, what does raid bots do? It basically takes your character, and depending on what settings you enter, it will simulate a certain fight. Let's say, for example, it will simulate a dummy fight, a patchwork fight for 5 minutes, and then it will simulate it thousands of times and calculate the average. This is important because when you're hitting a dummy with your character, you will get a result, but it will vary a lot, right? It will vary on the crits that you do, it will vary on just general spell variance that we have in a game, and it will vary on like trinket procs, other procs, crits, as I said, crit damage. So the fact that it has multiple iterations will give you a much more accurate average result, which will matter more. So once you import your character, you have all of the gear available, once the one that you have equipped and the one that is in your bags here. So by selecting items, it will compare them to each other. So for example, I have this necklace equipped. If I select this one, it will compare the two between another. Keep in mind that the more items you select, the more variations of combinations you have, and you can see it down here. So right now I have 2 combinations, which equates to 10,000 iterations at the moment. The more I select, especially if you select, for example, certain enchants or gems or certain rings, then it will increase the iterations a lot, and at some point you won't be able to sim it anymore because it's going to be too difficult to figure out. Right now, for example, I have 38 million iterations, which equates to 7,776 combinations, which is of course too high to calculate. So keep that in mind. Don't go too crazy with your comparisons. You can just do them in multiple sims. Then, if you're trying to compare certain items, you want to make sure that you, as I said, have the correct talent selected. And you also want to make sure that you have the correct simulation option, the correct fight style. So if you want to sim for your raid, single target, then just select patchwork. Number of bosses 1, fight length 5 minutes, and you can go with the nightly version if your spec gets up a lot of updates from the theory crafters that are writing the APL, then you can go with the nightly version. Here you can select Bloodlust, Battle Shout, any kind of buffs that you have. Removing some of them would make sense if you're, for example, simming for Mythic Plus. Then you might not have all of these buffs available, so maybe removing some of them would make sense. If you're simming for M+, you can go for Dungeon Slice. It would be a pretty decent way of figuring out, just like getting a general idea of what's good for Mythic Plus. But the best way would always be to use an actual M+ APL. But I'm not going to explain it in this video. That's a little bit too complicated. I'm going to go into that later. Here in this video, I want to make sure that you understand how to sim item upgrades and Droptimizer, and how to sim embellishments and sparks. Let's go with item upgrades first. So here, the item upgrade currency, you can enter how much you have of each. This is actually really important because if you want to maximize your player power, your character's power for a certain moment, let's say you're raiding tonight, and you have X amount of crests, Y amount of Valor Stones, and you want to get the most out of that. So what do? You enter, let's say, I'm going to have 1,500 Valor Stones. It imports your current stats of your character with the SimC that we just did earlier, but maybe you're going to get some more because you do some quests or whatever, then you can manually adjust it here. And then you just enter the amount of crests you have, and here you can even adjust the amount of catalyst charges you have. Then, once you have this selected, you can also even add certain items here. For example, if you would want to sim the difference between certain crafted items, you can add, for example, rune-branded armbands for me here. And I add rune-branded mantle to see which one I want to craft. Here you select the stats of it, and you can also select the item over here. and then it will add them below. So for example, I have the rune branded mantle here added. I press this plus sign, and then I can select the embellishments or whatever I want to sim the difference of. But before we get into that, we do, as I said, want to sim the upgrade system. So the way you do that is by selecting the item that you consider upgrading and then select them here. So for example, this locket I consider upgrading to 613 or to 616 or to 619. Otherwise, I'm considering upgrading this cloak to 13, 16, 19, right? Or I consider upgrading my chest to 603, right? And then you can continue whatever upgrades you consider you can add here. Then you would be calculating the difference by just pressing Find Top Gear. So this is how you would just select every single upgrade that you would want to do. And then it will tell you, okay, it's best to upgrade your back once, and it's best to upgrade your necklace twice, and your chest once, right? It will depend your upgrades according to the crest and the valor stones that you've entered here. Then with embellishments, as I said earlier, you can add any items here even. You can also add dungeon items that you're still gonna get. There's BOEs that you maybe consider buying and so on. For the embellished items, you wanna make sure you add the crafted item first, then add the embellishment you wanna sim and the item level you want to get. Sometimes you'll get this error message here: select more items to resolve other constraints, unable to generate combination with this item. Okay, this is basically just because I don't have other options for the non-embellished items, because you cannot equip more than 2 embellishments, right? And I already have an embellishment on my weapon, for example, right here. So I have to select an alternative if I would be using the embellished bracers. So let's say I select this weapon here, and now it can sim the alternative of having a non-embellished dagger, but instead have an embellished bracers instead, okay? So whenever you're adding embellishments, you have to make sure you give the option for the non-embellished item in every slot. So for example, I also have embellished waist. So I want to make sure I select the non-embellished waist to give the sim more iterations and the opportunity to remove that embellishment and add another one. So yeah, that's the basic idea on how to figure out what your best upgrades with crests are and how to figure out certain embellishments. Again, this is going to be loads of iterations if you want to sim everything at once. So I suggest simming like maybe the upgrades first and then simming the embellishments after, and then you can go back and compare again. Same goes with enchants and gems. Those usually take a long time because there's so many different combinations of gems that you can have. So that is something that I do recommend simming, but just keep in mind it's going to take a long time. Then there's so many options available here for the Top Gear sim. But if you want to sim Drop Demise, so that's going to be a little bit quicker if you just want to figure out if there's a certain upgrade or what you should be farming. So let's say, for example, Mythic Plus comes out, and you want to just know, okay, what's the best immediate upgrade for me in Mythic Plus? Which dungeon should I be doing? And then you can import your character here under Drop Demiser. And here you can select, for example, Mythic Plus dungeons. You can select all dungeons, and then you select which item level it should be. I'm not going to sim the vault because obviously that's not something I can farm for. So I'm going to be selecting whichever item level I can realistically farm. So let's say I can farm Mythic Plus 5 dungeons. Then I will select Mythic Plus 5 here, and it will then take all of the Mythic 5 items that I can equip and compare them to the ones that I have equipped on my character. And then it will tell me how big of an upgrade each dungeon is, or a potential upgrade. So for example, it would tell me, okay, Mist of Tyrna Scythe has the likelihood of giving me a certain percentage of upgrade, and there's multiple items that are actually an upgrade for me, therefore you should be doing Mist of Tyrna Scythe. That's how Optimizer works. You can also do the same thing for raiding, where you select Raid Finder, Normal, Heroic, or Mythic here. You can also add sockets here, or the gem that you would be adding if it was like a ring or a necklace, for example. And you can also sim professions, but I don't actually recommend simming professions here. I recommend simming professions under Top Gear, like I explained to you earlier, just because the profession sim will not give you the proper options with the embellished replaced items like I just explained. So basically it will just sim your current character with different embellishments. It will not select a replacement item that you have in your inventory for it. One thing I do want to mention is that whenever you get a result from raid bots, you need to make sure that you're thinking about the result logically. Because if you're simming patchwork 5 minutes, single target fight, then of course keep in mind that that is not a realistic scenario. Yes, it will tell you what's best for single target for sure. Like whenever you're raiding, there's many times where there's not just one target, and in addition, you're not just standing still, right? So take the information with a grain of salt. And in addition, when you're simming for Mythic Plus, when you're simming Dungeon Slice, again, keep in mind that it's not going to be the most accurate, the perfectly accurate information. So sometimes if you just want to sim AoE, then what I do sometimes is I select patchwork here, and I just increase the number of bosses and maybe lower the amount of time that I'm fighting the boss, like maybe 1 minute 30. This would be simulating a Mythic Plus pool on a really high key level where the mobs live for a long time, right? And then when I get this information, where I compare certain trinkets, for example, or certain embellishments, I can compare the information I get from this sim to the information I get from the single target sim. And then I can say, okay, this trinket is the best for single target by a little bit, but the same trinket is by far the worst trinket for this AoE pool. And then I can compare the other trinkets. Okay, the second best trinket for single target is actually the strongest trinket for an AoE pool. Then for Mythic Plus, it would make sense to equip that second best trinket for single target, right? Because then you lose out a little bit of single target damage, but you gain a lot of AoE damage. Or maybe even the other way around, right? So that's something that you can compare left and right. And that is just something that you should consider whenever you're looking at these results. Here you can also compare talent trees as well. You can create different kinds of talent trees in-game, import them, and then compare them here for certain fight styles too. And the possibilities here are really endless. There's so many things you can do. Again, I didn't even mention the catalyst charges, but this is like you can turn an item into a tier piece here by pressing convert into catalyst item. And then you can even compare which items you should catalyze, right? So I can say, okay, what if I catalyze this versus catalyzing this one, for example, right? So that is something you can do as well. Sorry, I wanted to keep this video short, but there's a lot of information that I can share about this. But I hope this helped you out to at least get an initial idea of how to use raid bots in the War Within. And yeah, if you have any more questions, ask in the comments below or come over to my stream at twitch.tv/Naguura. You can ask any questions there as well, and I can help you out on how to sim. I'm a huge nerd and I love looking at data and numbers. So yeah, just ask me anything if you want to know something about how to sim your character. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you like this video and give it a thumbs up. And have a nice rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye.